All right, guys. On today's episode of the Barbell Life, we're going to actually dig a little bit deeper into some of the science of why we do some of the things that we're doing. We're going to look at some of the newest methods that we've been using. I'll explain why we're doing it, and once again, the science behind it. So, hopefully, we're going to learn a lot in this podcast, and I hope to do a series of this. So, it'll probably end up being more like I teach a little bit, then we have a guest. Teach a little bit, then I have a guest. So, but we're definitely going to talk a lot about adaptations and because strength alone doesn't do everything that we want it to do. So, what we do in the gym should be dictated by like what's the goal. So what's our projected outcome. Anyway, so latest methods and why. But first, we're going to talk about the science that's involved. We're going to talk about the principle of specificity, and we're going to look at it in a much deeper way than you probably have in the past. Velocity of movement creates specific gains at each particular velocity. External resistance type elicits different adaptations. Eccentric versus concentric versus isometric contraction. Each produces adaptations specific to the contraction. So not all contractions are created alike. And then some of the methods that we've been using that we're going to talk about today will be velocity based training, of course, accommodating resistance, creative flywheel, and isometrics. So hopefully you guys are having fun today. The science to understand specificity. The human body adapts specifically to any imposed demands. So examples, your joint angle. You're gonna get stronger at any particular joint angle that you are really focusing on, or that's creating the most force by overcoming the most resistance. So the angle of max force to overcome. So like by that I mean we're gonna get deeper into this, but when you're squatting just a free weight, when you're in the bottom, the the biggest impact to overcome, or the biggest force to overcome, would be at the very bottom, because the moment length of the hip is the longest in the very bottom. Whereas you stand up, it gets easier because the hip gets closer to the line of force that's created from the barbell and gravity. But if you add bands, that changes. Now it gets harder as you stand up. And so then you're going to strengthen the hip at the very tip top. And so, yeah, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but I'm just going to say, let me just throw this little nugget at you. When you do bands and you overload the bands and you make the lockout of the squat or the deadlift, make that the hardest part. Well, then it's going to incorporate more of the gluteus maximus, and then when you just do free weights, you're going to get a lot of the adductor magnus. So, which is also a hip extensor, so as well. Some of you might not know that, but it says adductor. I know you're thinking adduct, bring your legs in, but not the case. Adductor magnus is pretty good hip extensor, especially helping to extend the hips when you're in the very bottom of a squat. So, anyway, there's that nugget for you. Velocity meaning like if you train at a particular velocity, you're going to get better at that velocity, and any type of movement outside of the gym that is a faster velocity, or the one that you're working in at the time. And so plane of movement. So you know, sometimes people think plane, they're going to think transverse, frontal, sagittal, but break it down into just a little bit more. So we're going to talk about vertical, horizontal, lateral, and then rotational. So, and then type of resistance. So like if you use, oh well, I already did it by accident. So bands versus free weight versus chains versus man, what is it? The weight releasers. There's for every type of resistance, there are specific adaptations. Velocity of movements. So high velocity. When you do something like you see us doing, like speed work, or like I'll show you in this video. Hopefully, it's not too loud. We'll cut the volume down low. All right. So 0.41. See, the thing is that when you use bands, any particular load that you might use, any percentage you want to RM, it's going to move faster when you have bands. I mean, for two different reasons. For one, as it's pulling you down, it's adding to gravity. Normally, when you have just weight, it's just gravity acting on the mass that you have on the barbell. But when you add bands, it's not only gravity, but it's also that those bands actually pulling you down. So it speeds up the eccentric, and it makes and the faster you go down, you have your muscle spindles and Golgi tendon organs, and that neuromuscular element. The faster you go down, in turn, it's going to help you stand up faster. So anyway, so that if you want to do bands, do speed work, the adaptations are going to be a little bit different than just going super heavy, doing a 5 RM. So you're going to really improve rate coding, increases in due to an increased myofilament cross bridge detachment rate. So like what it's trying to do, the CNS is trying to send a signal to the muscles to for the cross bridges to actually take place, because the detachment of those cross bridges are faster. So it's like an adaptation to allow you to produce force under higher velocity. So it leads to more power. So if you're a weightlifter, if you're a football player, if you're a volleyball player, you're definitely going to want to spend some time with high velocity movements, which is, and then the only way to really know that is to measure it. It's flex, gym aware, gotta have something. Otherwise, you're just guessing. So it leads to an athlete's ability to produce force at higher velocities, and it changes. There's changes in all muscle fibers, contractile properties, allowing all muscle fibers to contract at a higher rate, whether it's type 2X, type 2A, type 1. All fibers, you know, start to have adaptations, giving them better contractile properties to contract faster. So no matter what kind of fiber it is. And then still receive max recruitment of high threshold motor units. So you're still going to get that um, high recruitment of those high threshold motor units, which is super important for multiple reasons, like creating force, hypertrophy. But in this case, hypertrophy might not be as much as it would if you just went straight weight and grinded it out. All right, all right. Lower velocities, aka heavy strength training, to near failure. You're going to get hypertrophy, which is, we are all trying to get jacked. The amount of tension and how long also increases internal moment arm length. So sometimes hypertrophy might not be what you're after. It all just depends, really. Like, are you working on a phase where you're trying to get faster, more explosive? Then just grinding out 5 RMs or multiple reps might not be what you want to do, because there's certain adaptations from grinding out hypertrophy that makes you slower. So it's something to consider. It's all about when and what are the goals. You're also going to get lateral force transmission of the muscle fibers to the surrounding. Let me go ahead and give a shout out to Dr. Chris Beardsley. He is my go-to of late on a lot of the things I'm reading, so you should probably read him too. But and then the layer transmits force to the tendons. So if you get better at that, you're going to get better force. But you're going to be able to create more force. And there's going to be a shift, though. Here's the bad one: from less oxidative type, say type 2X, to a more oxidative type, or type 2X to type 2A. So like that's not a good thing either if you're trying to be fast. Another thing too is like when you're going super heavy, there's going to be coactivation of the antagonist with the agonist, because it's helping to support the joint. So like when you're squatting, you're going down, and your quads are lengthening, your hamstrings are also engaging, and that's causing it to slow down. And so coactivation is definitely not what you want if you're a weightlifter, or if you're a sprinter, or if you're any kind of athlete, because it's that relationship between antagonist and agonist really that makes you faster. So if when my agonist, the muscle that's actually doing the contraction, when it's going, if the opposite muscle turns off, then that moves faster. You create the same amount of force, but it allows you to move faster because nothing's fighting you. So something to consider. And then there's external resistance provides specific adaptations as well, mainly referring to straight bar versus bands and chains. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, and so but bands tend to strengthen at higher proportions of the range of motion, while straight weight creates maximal forces to be overcome in the bottom. We talked about that. The bands get tougher as you stand up, and it's the reason it gets the straight weight is I told you the mum arm length. But I'm really curious about if you're really trying to get to say, let's say that hypertrophy is your goal, you might want to and muscular endurance that is, you might want to consider using heavy weight with bands, which is what we do a lot of. And so what that does, it makes it hard throughout. And so, it's going to be hard in the bottom because you have weight. It's going to be hard at the top because you have bands. So to play around with that a little bit might behoove you if you're just trying to get jacked. And so up here, you'll see, I should mention this too. You'll see this is I did this for GymAware, so gymaware.com. Go check that out. But we just did an article about force velocity profiling, and here's a mock force velocity profile that I made. Now remember, depending on how fast you're going, there's a different quality of strength being worked. Each quality has its own adaptations, own importance. So, like starting strength, that is that to me is really rate of force development. So that is it's from 1.3 meters per second and faster, and the goal is to get there as fast as you can. So if you're doing 25% of your best back squat, you're doing a squat jump, you have to develop that force quickly to be able to get up to that velocity. Therefore, it's going to help you improve rate coding, rate of force development, even at elasticity when you do multiple reps. Then there's speed strength and strength speed. Speed strength is 1.3, anywhere between 1 meters per second to 1.3 meters per second. And that is really where most of the Olympic lifts are done. The snatching, clean, especially when you're going heavy. So there's a lot of power being produced in either speed strength and strength speed, because strength speed is moving a moderately heavy weight very quickly. And so whereas speed strength, it's really what happens there. Speed becomes the main priority. So accelerated strength, that's where most of you spend your time when you're doing hypertrophy work. So let me get a laser pointer. There we go. Yeah. So accelerated strength, that is zero point 0.5 to 0.75 meters per second. And so that's where we're going to spend a lot of our time. It's not very fast. You're going to get, when you're doing 5 to 10 reps accelerated strength, you're going to get a lot of hypertrophy. Then there's absolute strength, zero point 0.5 and down. But there's a time for all of these. And it really, which one you choose comes down to, once again, the goal, and once again, I haven't said this yet already, but the person you're dealing with. So, if I'm a person that's super fast, but I'm weak, and my goal is power, I'm still going to want to spend quality time down here in absolute strength, accelerated strength, even though I've told you that that can make you slower. It won't. It's going to make you more powerful because you're already super fast. But unfortunately, you don't have enough strength to create the power, because remember, power equals force times velocity. So you got to have both. You just got to know at which end of the spectrum do you lie. Shout out Brian Mann. He's the one who developed this. I developed our own velocities and our own qualities that, where certain percentages fit in the quality of strength, because I coach all weightlifters and all really good weightlifters. So these numbers are all made with data from really good weightlifters. So if you coach weightlifting or you coach football, track and field, anything super explosive, this might be a little bit closer to what you're doing than some other chart. So, but feel free, my man down here, I've used this chart for years. So I just now got my own data. So do either one. External resistance. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Bands and chains. everybody who knows me knows that I like to use bands. Not not all the time, but there's a time and a place. And here's why. Peak forces are experienced somewhere between the middle and lockout versus at the bottom. So once again, if I only spend time, squatting or doing deadlifts, and really I'm in a sport where peak force needs to happen at the tip top. Matter of fact, with Ryan Grimslet, we just found out like he creates a ton of force off the floor, but then probably more than anybody in America. However, in the power position into extension, uh, it wasn't spiking like it should. So we've been spending more time not just with bands and chains, but going heavy with bands and chains because I want him to experience heavy force and to get maximal force reduction. Two things have to happen, and that is you got to have max motor unit recruitment. And motor unit is any axon nerve and all the muscle fibers that nerve innervates. So you want maximal uh, maximal motor unit recruitment, and you need the bar to slow down. Meaning, like you got to be pushing as hard as you can, and there's such a resistance that you start to slow down. So um, that only for me, if I want that to happen at the tip top, go heavy and use bands. Anyway, higher velocities are achieved with any percentage of 1 RM, rowing 1 over that. Then free weights, causing adaptation of producing force during higher velocities, aka more power. So if you're, like I said, if you're doing weightlifting and not using bands, well, unless you're just that naturally, explosive person, you're probably, missing some kilograms. Especially what I try to do, just to give you full disclosure, like I might not use bands, for the first, say if I have 20 weeks, I won't do it for the first 10, but the final 10 is going to be more and more to the point of where it's almost always bands toward the closer I get to the meet because power is where it's at. Bands especially will cause higher velocities during the eccentric and concentric contractions due to the added load on top of gravity. I already went over that. Therefore, it would be a smart for all power athletes to spend some quality time with bands and for people needing to produce more power at lockout. So, straight weight, maximal hypertrophy due to one, max motor unit recruitment and higher amounts of force. So it's important for strengthening at the bottom portions of a movement, best for maximum absolute strength. And so a combination, though, is where it's at, I think. So it might be the best for maximum hypertrophy. Also considered for max muscular endurance. If you're at 225, if you're a football player who's got to rep out 225, you might want to consider this. Also, CrossFitters, muscular endurance. You might want to look at using bands and chains. All right, type of contraction, eccentric versus concentric versus isometric. Listen up, this is going to be a good one. So, concentric, shortening of a muscle. It's like if you're doing a bicep curl, it's when your hand is coming closer to the body. So, the voluntary active force production with muscle fibers, and they produce the actin, myosin cross bridges due to signals from the CNS. The adaptations you're going to get from concentric training would be higher rate coding, a pronation angle increases, allowing for more force, but it's probably going to slow the contraction rates down. I don't know if you know what pronation angle is. I'm going to, by the way, I'm going to go over each of these in much more detail in the future. I'm just kind of like throwing a lot at you so you get an idea of why we do some of the things. But pronation angle is talking about the way the muscle fiber runs in relation to the longitudinal axis of the muscle itself. So like think about if you got like your quad, vastus medialis, and it's going to obviously run into a tendon and cross the patella. And so if the fibers run long ways, then it's going to be a much faster contraction. However, if you have a bunch of muscle fibers, which you do, most everyone does in a quad, in parallel, you have more, but they're shorter, so they're stronger, but it's going to take much more motion to get your quad to contract, if that makes sense. So then getting to the eccentric contraction, a lot happens with the eccentric, so you should listen up. I feel like most of you are missing the boat on eccentric and isometric contractions. So eccentric is the muscle lengthening phase. So if you're doing an RDL, it's when you're hinging at the hip. CNS adaptations are going to be lowering coordination, reduction in spinal inhibition, and motor unit recruitment. Shout out Chris Beardsley. But so what that means is you're going to get more coordinated, and that doesn't really help. Just because you're getting better at doing eccentric contractions, but reduction in spinal inhibition does, and so does motor unit recruitment. Obviously, that's your CNS, recruiting more and more of those motor units. But the spinal inhibition is awesome because what it does, it gets your body um, prepared for heavier eccentric contractions, so the Golgi tendon organs don't shut you down. Because, look, if you're going super heavy, say on a RDL, and your body senses that it's too heavy, it's going to think that you're in danger and it shuts you down. It doesn't even allow you to recruit the motor units. However, the more you do it, the safer it feels, and the more it doesn't inhibit any kind of muscle contractions. And not only that, but the muscle spindles will get more efficient at causing contractions. The Golgi tendon organs will get more efficient at not inhibiting. So, good thing to do. But there's also muscle tendon adaptations due to resisting the stretch. So the collagen layers around the muscle fibers and tighten, which is a protein filament inside the muscle, it gets stronger as well. So, and then isometric contractions, length doesn't change. That's just when you're like, say, if I'm pushing as hard as I can against the wall, that is a isometric contraction. The adaptations are force production at the angle of contraction, muscle hypertrophy, and more importantly, improvements in tendon structure and function, becomes stiffer, more elasticity. It's a great thing. Considerations. I would do it at longer muscle lengths. That's what I've got. A lot of the research that I've used to do this podcast today is at the end, and I'll also put it in the show notes if you're just listening. So, anyway, longer muscle lengths produce the most hypertrophy, and for the most hypertrophy, muscular hypertrophy, and tendon structure makes it stronger. Increases the matrix of making it like where it won't bend as much, which is good. It creates more power. And isometrics take about 6 hours to recover from, so that's awesome. So that means you can do it more often. So if you have a specific area that needs to get stronger, isometric contractions is the way to go. Oh, by the way, before I move on, just want to say that one of my favorite ways of eccentric training is going to definitely be, I mean, anyone who follows me knows this, the Kratos Flywheel. Like, the adaptations you're going to get from that, I can't imagine there being a person out there who wouldn't benefit. Anyway. Now, some methods that we've utilized lately, and now we're going to bring all that stuff, all that science we just talked about, bring it home, hopefully. So velocity-based training. Anyone now who knows me knows that I'm a huge velocity proponent as far as training because it takes guessing out of it. But anyway, let's go over it. So there's three main mechanisms of hypertrophy. There's maximum force, maximum velocity, and proximity to failure. So like uh, maximum force, that's an easy one. You don't need anything to tell you that you're at maximum force because you're going to push it as hard as you can. It's going to slow way down. So, but max velocity, knowing that with every rep, I am pushing it at max velocity. The only way to know is to know like what either one, how fast should that percentage be going based on past data or based on your own personalized. Even better, like if I know that at 75% of a squat, I'm at 0.57 meters per second, and I am doing a 5RM at 75%, the first rep or two should be at doggone 0.57 meters per second, or I'm not going at max velocity. Therefore, I am not recruiting maximum motor units. So, oh, and by the way, those are the three. If you're wanting to if you're looking to hypertrophy. Now, I know we've talked about metabolic stress, muscle damage, and all these things, but really, you know, the mechanical mechanical tension. That's the most important element of hypertrophy. And within mechanical tension, these are the three main ways of making sure that you maximize hypertrophy. So, only way to ensure compensatory acceleration that results in maximum motor unit recruitment and max rate coding from CNS to, to muscle is with velocity, because that's the only way that you can. I mean, eventually, an athlete, maybe 5 years down the road, will know their body enough of what it means to have that intent of accelerating through a movement all the way to the tip top. But with velocity, it's like same day you can teach an athlete what it means to go maximum speed. So improve all muscle fibers' contractile properties, aka all fibers will get faster if you're moving at a high rate. Allows us to measure where each individual falls on the force velocity relationship. That is something I need to backtrack in a second and go over, but let me read these last two, and then I want to show you one more thing in a past slide. Hypertrophy specificity, meaning velocity loss, is the way. One of the main mechanisms of hypertrophy is that you're using maximum force, and so for the way we measure it is that there becomes a decrease in velocity. It's slowing down because it's so hard, and you're using every bit of force that you can produce. And so the only way to measure that is looking at velocity. So like I said, if you start out at 75%, you're going to do, if you want, to go to failure, which is where maximum hypertrophy happens. However, it's, yes, going to failure creates maximum hypertrophy, but it doesn't allow you to recover fast enough to do it enough times. So it's better to, leaving that 2 RIR for the most part, on average is the way to go. But anyway, so looking at force, that velocity loss is a great way to measure the type of hypertrophy you're getting. So if I'm going to 40 to 60% velocity loss, so if my first rep is 0.57 and then I'm finishing at zero point 0.2, then you've got a lot. You've had a lot of velocity loss and you've gone to failure. And so that's great. You're definitely going to get bigger. However, like we said in the past, that can cause adaptations that you might not want, depending on what stage of your training you're in and what kind of athlete you are, and your individual genetics. So if I need all the strength and all the muscle I can get, then fine, go to failure. But if you're coming to within a few weeks of competing, or your season starting and you're looking for maximum speed, you probably want to keep that to around 20%. We really try to shoot for our weightlifters to stay around for, 80% of the year. They're at 20% or less. So, they're not getting as much hypertrophy, but we're a weight class sport. Remember that. So if I'm trying to go up a weight class, what I just said might not be true. But for the most part, we're in the weight class we want to be in. And so we stay within 20%. So you still got hypertrophy, but it might not be as much. But it's, you're going to encourage those, the properties of all the muscle fibers, regardless of, the fast twitch, slow twitch. They're all going to get faster. All the properties are going to get faster in all the different fibers. So, um, other obvious uses: daily readiness, intent. I already talked about it a little bit. And then safety cutoffs, meaning if you want to say, hey, let's work to a maximum, you might consider saying, let's work to a 1 RM at, say, zero point 0.4. They'll never, if you're squatting, you're never going to miss a squat at under zero point 0.4 meters per second, or at faster, at zero point 0.4 or faster. So now, before we go on, I want to show you guys one more thing back here. So the good thing about measuring, velocity, and this is profile that I made up in an article I just wrote for GymAware. But I can look and see where should I train this guy. So this person is really hurt. You know, their starting strength, it flashes red if it's not within that acceptable range. But so this person needs starting strength. They also failed in the middle at strength speed. So that tells me that this person is doing great with absolute strength. But if they're flashing red, we need to focus more on faster, more powerful type movements. And because I did go over all the different qualities and what that meant, so it's good to find what each individual needs. So then when you see, here's this individual, this person needs to work on elasticity, getting faster, high velocity, high power, and I look at also what sport is this person playing. Now, if this person is like a power lifter, then I don't care what this says. I'm still going to spend the majority of my time under absolute strength because that's what's up. I might spend a little bit of time maybe in strength speed because, force does equal mass times acceleration. And the more I can accelerate, the better. But really, it's a game of force, is what powerlifting is. So it's good to know the individual and the sport the individual is about to play and the season that they're in. So now back to this. All right, accommodating resistance, higher rate coding. Let's actually take a look. This is Ruby, and so I have to switch off this. All right, let's see if we get Ruby started.
Let's go, Ruby.
Turn it down a little bit. Sorry. So see how one thing we messed up. See how it gets slack at the bottom. The goal is to keep it tighter, but see how she's able to accelerate all the way through the movement. A lot of times when you don't have bands, people will naturally decelerate at the tip top because they're afraid the bar is going to come off their back and they're anticipating racking the bar. The bands allow you to accelerate all the way through, so they really make it easy to do compensatory acceleration, which is making sure that you're going as fast as you can and pushing as hard as you can all the way through the set, which does what? Gives you maximum hypertrophy up here. So also accommodating resistance is going to be more power production. We talked about that already. Higher velocities of all the muscle fibers. All muscle fibers, contractile properties allow all muscle fibers to contract at a higher rate regardless, fast twitch, slow twitch. And then it's great for force production at the lockout position. So, like if you have trouble like locking out a deadlift, or if you're a weightlifter, if you're having trouble really stepping on the gas in the middle or the finish of the second pull, then consider doing some heavy deadlifts or heavy squats with bands really loading up at the tip top. So you can get better at producing force where you need to produce the most. Um, it also increases the rate of eccentric velocity, leading to increased eccentric adaptations, collagen, titan. We talked about that in the eccentric category. And then increased eccentric velocity aids in neuromuscular improvement as well. Muscle spindles react better, and GTOs don't inhibit as much. And then, when used with free weight, potentially maximum hypertrophy and muscular endurance, as maximum force is required throughout. Oh, now the Kratos. I've already written, an article, a crazy article about the Kratos flywheel that answers most questions. And right now, I'm about to do a protocol. By the time this is released, the protocol might already be released, but I'm working on a protocol this week for you guys who have flywheels. But refer to the eccentric training adaptations that we talked about earlier. The CNS adaptations, lowering coordination, that doesn't really matter, but reduction in spinal inhibition and motor unit recruitment. That's going to be better, and plus muscle tendon adaptations. The collagen layers around the muscle fibers and tighten inside the muscle fibers grow stronger. Not to mention that, but the tendons themselves become thicker and the matrix becomes tighter. So now you got a thicker, stronger, tighter um, tendon, which is that's what creates a ton of elastic energy. So that's we didn't really talk a lot about that when I was younger, when I was coming up, but that's the big one now. So really consider those tendon adaptations as well. Shout out Keith Barr. Anyway, however, you still get the concentric adaptations as well because you are with the flywheel. I recommend, and I'll push the play real quick. Um,
I wanted to show you guys a couple of the.
I'm going to turn this down, but what happens? They use their hands, and what they're doing is they're aiding the concentric contraction, and then when they're doing the eccentric, they're not trying to resist with their hands. So because we know this is that eccentrically we're stronger than we are concentrically, mainly because we're still producing force, but we also have the titan, and we also have the collagen that's helping to slow things down. So that's resisting as well as you producing force to slow it down. So that's where we are stronger eccentrically. So therefore, doing using the flywheel. Let's see. Using the flywheel, if you overload the concentric, I mean, you overload the eccentric by aiding the concentric. You still get concentric contractions. So you're still going to get all the great adaptations from concentric, but we're also going to get we're going to overload the eccentric and get increased titan um, and increased collagen, increased matrix of the tendons. So lots of great adaptations. However, you still get the concentric adaptations, force production, pronation angle. So consider that. And then key is how you perform. Overload the eccentric. Now, isometrics. I'll show you. Oh, by the way, she's doing blood flow restriction. We're going to go over that in the next podcast. So get ready for that. Whoa. Sorry about that. So now what we're doing is working on isometric contractions, right where Ruby needs help, at the right out of the hole. We're going to get stronger. So you can do this. I like using bands because the bands make sure that they're pushing as hard as they can because if they start to slack off, the bar will come off the pins. So the bands add a little something in force reduction and they encourage the person to continue having maximum contraction because if you don't have maximum contraction, you can still get hypertrophy at certain joint angles. However, what you'll be missing is the benefits that come with the tendons. And so, like, I want for us, it's important. Elasticity is just as important as just the muscles being strong. So I want that elastic energy. So do the pauses and pause at the longer muscle lengths. Remember that too. So joint angle. Here's some things to consider with isometrics. Whatever joint angle you need strengthening, there's nothing better than um, isometrics. It's quick to recover from. 6 hours total it takes, so you could really do it every day and recover it. So I like bands, ensure max contraction and max force production, and long muscle lengths are best, especially for tendon structure. All right, next time we're going to talk about post-activation potentiation. We're going to look at the science or lack of science. We're going to talk about doing it with bands, using waves. We're going to show you how to use it at a competition. Blood flow restriction, looking at science, a few different protocols. There's a lot. We use all of these, by the way. So deeper dive into eccentric focused training. Um, a deeper look into science. We're going to look at weight releasers, measuring eccentric strength versus concentric, how to actually measure it and see what you need to work on. And then a look into some of the methods we've used to crush split jerk barriers. So lately, our entire team has been getting really good at jerks. Ruby, one of them, who had struggled forever, has now crushed some barriers. So I'm pleased to announce that we've come up with a lot of great ways to get through. It's a tough one, man. It's really in the past some athletes have really struggled with jerks, but we've done a really good job of late getting through that. So We'll look at using isometrics, post-activation potentiation, bands to target specific joint angles, and more, and a few cues that we have used successfully as well. So, oh, my bad. It's just a picture. I was hoping that was going to be doing the 210 kilo jerk. So, which is crazy. In conclusion, masterleak.com if you want to read more. We have, I don't know, hundreds of articles there. Email me at travis@jimware.com with any questions. And go to jimware.com. Use code MASH5 for 5% off Gymaware or Flex Stronger. Um, and these are the references. By all means, you should read through these. These are really good information. It was a lot of fun reading through them. And also, all right, so I should have erased the Gymaware on the first page, but go check out Dynamic Fitness and Strength. They are the sponsors, as you all are well aware. They're sponsors of the Barbell Life, but go check them out for resistance bands. You know, the best jerk blocks on the planet and the best racks. There's the link, mydynamicfitness.com. I actually put the one for resistance bands particularly. And then, for the best flywheel, in my opinion, the only flywheel out there, go to Kabuki Strength and check out the Kratos flywheel. That thing is so rad. Use code MASH03 to get 3% off. Not a huge discount, but on something like that, it still adds up. And it's so worth it. And the product is so well made. It's just, yeah, it costs them so much to make something so awesome. So, but 3%, it's better than zero. Go check it out, and you will thank me. Even if you don't get a discount, you'll thank me for getting that. Next time, we'll talk more about some other ways, like I said, to increase the jerk, and we're going to go into deeper into adaptations and give you guys some ideas to do things on your own. I know that Chris Beardsley sure inspired me to dig deeper into what I'm doing and to make some changes that have really paid off for my athletes in a very short period of time. So stay with me on this whole adaptation series and enjoy. Hope it makes making your decisions in your strength conditioning much easier.